Hey Dreamer, let's get started. So, today is day three of my TikTok live series for Kiki's Big Dream Experiment. Kiki's Big Dream Experiment is a 90-day challenge I set for myself to operate kind of like my dreams are already happening. And I want to connect with people in different ways to help them achieve their dreams. And part of that is to have them help me achieve mine. Um, so I am running each of these TikTok lives with a different theme, and my theme is based on my theme of the week. I set up my theme of the week based on what I learned last week and what I plan and dream for this week. And then I shuffle cards from the tarot deck and draw until I've got a major arcana card, and that gives me a theme to run with. And I want to operate this way because I didn't want to plan out, do a 12-week plan, because that's too long to plan ahead in the future for, to try and figure out what's the story I'm telling. And yeah, it's too much planning and not enough doing. So I've given myself the structure to do these lives, to write posts on LinkedIn, Substack, my blog, various other places to discuss the themes. And all of the themes will fall into they'll fit somewhere in the story, because that's what I'm best at. I'm best at doing something and then meaning making from it later. The doing part, my intuition leads me to a direction that I'm interested in. And I guess my morality will tell me whether I'm doing things right or wrong based on the information that I have. And so this is where the meaning making comes later. And I realize, that's not really how the world works a lot of the time, but it's how I work. And so that's what I want to do. So this week, the theme is vivid dreams. And I mean, vivid dreams is all about what Kiki Dreams Big is about. And I would love to hear from people what their dreams are. What are the goals that you want to set for yourself? What are the hobbies you're interested in? Where does your creativity come from? Uh, and also, what are your opinions on what I'm saying as well? If there's stuff you disagree with, then let me know, because I'd love to have discussions about it. Because I live so much in my head. We all do. Hey there. Shout out for Mark O'Connell. I'm sorry that you are suffering in hospital at the moment. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, it's when I hear things like this, I feel like I wish I could do more. So just I suppose at least I can do a shout out. So if that made you feel a bit better, then I'm glad. Um, yeah, I don't know. I will continue talking and stay engaged if you want to. If you think there's stuff in here that is interesting to you, um, yeah, I'll try and do what I can to bring a bit of happiness into the world. That's why I started this initiative, because I found out that I wasn't happy and I wanted to figure out how can I be happy. Um, and I think that there's so much that we can feel happy about, but we are constantly told we need more. We need more money. We need more material things. And we don't appreciate what we do actually have. And so, you know, coming back to this idea of dreams, I have dreams of things I want to do, and I'm 33 and I've been working in a corporate environment for 10 years, and I'm looking back at wish lists and goal lists that I had from 5, 6, 7 years ago, and none of them are done. I'm thinking, why? Why am I waiting so long to do these things? And I realize it's because I'm following someone else's dreams. You know, I am just a number on a spreadsheet to someone higher up, and I don't want to be that. I don't want anyone to be that. I want everyone to be able to chase their own dreams. And for me, what worked was realizing that I can just choose to be happy. And it took a lot of mental work to hold on to that. Um, but I feel like the more that I choose to be happy, the more that I actually am happy, and that everything around me seems to just change to facilitate that. You know, I'll find something that I forgot I had as a kid, and I'm like, oh wow, I forgot, about this hobby. Remember how happy I was back then? Like, how can I get that happiness now? And that's what I want to do with Kiki Dreams Big, is to connect with people and see how we can be happier and follow the goals that we want to achieve and share the crazy ideas because, you know, if we don't share them and talk about them, they're just going to live in our heads and they're never going to materialize. Some of them are really difficult to materialize, but some of them are really easy. Like the shout out. Like if you want to shout out, just ask me and I'll I'll do it. Um, if that is the if that's the thing that will make someone else happy, then why not? Hi, Callan. Yes, you can have a shout out. I wish I knew more about like what I could do other than just saying hi. Um, well, I know one thing. It is that I used to do these tarot. I used to do these tarot readings for people on TikTok Live, and I've actually set up and to restart these tomorrow. Um, so I guess that's kind of a thing I can do when people want to connect with me. Thanks, Callan. So yeah, where was I with the theme of vivid dreams? So in terms of meaning making, I always say that you can't tell your story while you're in the middle of it. And where you are right now, there are stories that are happening that you're still trying to figure out. Um, but there's also stories that you're getting to the end of, and you can start to make meaning of those things. The trouble is that we live so much in the present and we're trying to figure out the next step that we can get lost in trying to tell the story before it happens. Hi, Shane. I'm sorry to hear that you're in hospital. I hope you're being looked after. Good to hear that you're on the mend. Um, yes, meaning making, storytelling. Yeah, as you can see, I can get a bit distracted. um, yeah, when you're particularly dealing with people, because you can't tell what other people are thinking, you can only see what they're doing, and that can be really, that can take up a lot of space in your head, trying to curate the way that you act around them because you're trying to figure out, like, are they on your side? Are they not on your side? And you can't ever, you know that unless they tell you. And so these are the stories that you're in the middle of that consume so much time. And you just have to keep going with your perspective and like focusing on what you're doing for yourself so that you can eventually get to an end point, because you'll either get to a point where you find out information uh, that fills in the gaps about that story and makes sense of it, or you might never get the information. You're not going to know. You can't control whether you get that information. And so you have to build a story for yourself. 6, 7. Yeah, I was watching this week's episode of South Park. I mean, I knew the meme, but like seeing it on South Park, then just South Park is great. More people should watch South Park. They really should. But yeah, the story you have because of what someone else is doing is at the end of the day a story you have in your head. So why not tell a story about yourself that comes out good in the end? We can accomplish a lot more if we think about things that way. And when you look back at memories in the past and you have all of these stories about what happened, you can't change the what happened, but you can change the meaning you have from it. Like, what is the strength that you embody to get out of it? What are the positives that came from it? What are some of the negatives that you had to deal with? And are there any negatives still lingering that you need to work on? The more you grow, the more information you get to fill in gaps there to help you craft a story that allows you to move forward. Because we don't remember everything perfectly. We remember how it made us feel, usually. And memories get broken down into a collection of feelings. If you've ever seen the movie Inside Out, the Pixar movie, that's a great representation of it because it can feel like these memories are just on one emotion, but they're actually far more complex if you zoom out a little bit and see the situation as a whole. Because emotions are just a bodily reaction to our environment. Our brain is taking in so much information all of the time that we're only consciously aware of a fraction of that. Because if we were aware of everything, we wouldn't be able to do or think properly the way that we do. If there's sirens blaring in your ears, that would be what it would be like if your brain didn't filter out noise. Having lights in your face all of the time would be like if our brain didn't like dim the visual information that we get. You're probably not aware that you can see your nose right now, but if you look at your nose, you can see it. If you close one eye, you'll see it. But when the two eyes are working together, they compensate for one another to make it look like you can't see your nose. It's all these little things that you don't even notice. But there's so many of them that uh, work together subconsciously that make you have these emotions and you don't really always know why. The biggest one that people will recognize is when they get a gut feeling. They're like, oh, something is wrong here. I don't know what it is, but something is not quite right. That's the biggest one. And that's your intuition. And that is the strongest pull you have in your body to do something. And I think if we cultivate intuition more and understand how our body reacts to it, then we can use that to our advantage to work on our dreams. If we want to do something really big and complicated, then it can feel so far away and so big we don't even know where to start. I was talking to someone earlier about starting a business, and they said, yeah, but like it's, $100 to actually register a business name. But how do you come up with the idea to actually go and start making money, to connect with people, to sell something? That's the complicated part, and there's no manual for that. And so many people sell a manual, and that's what so many online courses are and everything. But the difficulty is that that manual works for you. It might not work for me. And I know this might sound hypocritical, but I want to work with people to share my frameworks, not to tell them this is how you do it, but to try and get their perspective flipping to realize these are the skills I have. How can I use those to figure out where I need to go? Because once you know your own skills and your own value, then you can see, okay, I'm a mathematician. I don't know taxes. So I could learn a lot from talking to a tax accountant about incorporating a business and see, like, would it make financial sense to do that? And they might say, it'll cost this amount of money. It's tax efficient when you're earning X amount. Okay, well, that's good to know because it means then I'm not like trying to chase incorporating a business because I'm not earning enough for it to be tax efficient. I may as well just, be self employed for the time being. All these little things, if you get stuck on the details because you don't know enough information, that can really hold you back. And that's what I want to talk to people about when I say that I want to speak to them about their dreams. Because when you think about your dreams, there's also another thing that comes up, and that is fear. There's the fear of what you will lose by chasing this other dream. And a lot of the fear that I hear people talking about is around money. If I leave this job and go to something else, what if it takes me too long to get there and then I don't have money to support my family? That is a big consideration because money is our survival mechanism in this world. And it's exhausting to always constantly be thinking about money. When you go and get your coffee each morning, at what point do you go to get your coffee and you're like, this is, I don't know, €5. It's €5 I could be spending on something else. It's €35 in the week that I could be putting into an online course. And you're constantly having to play all of these priorities off against each other because we're conditioned to deal with money. But when you start to put yourself and your intuition and your value first, then money becomes this very external thing that becomes a tool for you to use. And so rather than like coping with your daily coffee, you can think, oh, I can make my coffee at home and get that same benefit, we'll say, but I've saved a bit of money and now I can put it into a course that I really want to do. Just an example. And it comes back to this idea that if you have a dream, there's going to be fears that hold you back from it because fear is an emotion that keeps you safe. Where you are right now is a safe environment because you're alive and your brain is like, okay, I'm alive. What can I do to like not change anything? It's like it is like going through an obstacle course that is falling apart around you. You're like, oh, I can take a step over here because the ground is solid. Let's test the other bits around us and see where's the next piece of solid ground, and you go over there. And that's what your brain is doing all of the time with life. And it manifests as fear when you're pushing too many of the boundaries at the same time, because all of those little discomforts build up into this feeling of fear. And fear is not bad, fear is very powerful. For one, it's the thing that holds you back. You know, it's holding an entire person from doing something. Like that is powerful. But you can flip it the other way, and when you start to kind of play with your fear and have a dialogue with it of sorts, you can put yourself in slightly uncomfortable situations to show yourself that your decision making and your intuition is safe. That when your fear realizes that, oh, okay, Kiki's decision making will keep me safe, so I can trust it, then you start to trust yourself. And that is that's all you really need. You just need to be able to fully trust yourself, and it takes time to do that, of course. But when you start to trust yourself, you can then start to make these incremental changes to work towards your dreams. And that's what I am trying to do with Kiki Dreams Big. Um, so that is my big dream. But how I get there then is I go onto lives like this and explain what I'm doing. I write articles to share my perspectives on the workplace. I write articles to share my perspectives on philosophical topics. I write poetry as well to share my feelings and emotions and ideas in or through metaphor, basically, because when you read poetry, you don't always know why it's written the way it is or what the author means, but you read it and it will elicit something in you. And it's a great tool for communication, because when you start to talk about what this external piece of writing means, then you and this other person who are talking about the writing are speaking the same language, because the language is the words on the page, and you're both looking at the same word and you've come away with different meanings. We do that all of the time with things. You're having a conversation with someone about your hobbies. You've got the same language, so you know what you're talking about. If you're in the workplace and you're talking about a project or a problem, you're talking the same language, so you can solve it. Hi to Lily Main. Thanks, Kira. Hope you're having a good day. So the core thing is that when you're talking with the same language, you can actually make progress together. So many discussions and debates break down as to like two clashing forces because you're talking about the same thing in different perspectives and you're not seeing the other person's perspective. And that's where empathy comes in. If you listen to what other people are saying and try to understand their perspective, then you can see why they're arriving at the conclusions that they do arrive at. And there's going to be some middle ground in between that you can start with as a first step. So take that first step together and then see, okay, how do we end up repositioning our arguments based on this mutual agreement? And that's how we can each take our perspectives and dreams and work together, is having a conversation, removing any personal feeling from it, because yes, it's fair to have feelings, and if things are getting heated, you want to give space to let those emotions get processed, but then come back to it later and think, okay, why did I have an emotional reaction? It's because I didn't feel heard, or I didn't get my point across because I'm trying to explain things down here, but actually my big motivation is up here. There's lots of different reasons, but when things are emotionally charged, it's very hard to operate on logic. And you need a balance between the two. You can't be totally emotionless and you can't be totally logic only. You need both together. And facilitating an environment where you can keep emotions stable enough that they're not getting too heated and argumentative, that facilitates good conversation. Like in a workplace, that's why there's this idea of professionalism, and it's creating an environment where you're not supposed to be emotional. I think that it's too strict at times, and people aren't being emotional enough because they're being penalized for it, and that's not good. But the idea behind it is good. It's like going to couples therapy. You're entering into a space where you're allowed to feel your feelings and you have someone else moderating. And then when you leave, it kind of happened in the therapy session. So when you leave, you've left it there and you can look back on it later. It comes back to this thing of not telling your story while you're in the middle of it. Let the story of that therapy session happen, then try and make meaning making of it later. Because it's very hard in the moment to always do that in the most productive way, because you're constantly battling your dreams versus your fears. If you're trying to connect with someone and you're not getting that connection properly, is there a fear that's holding you back from it? Potentially. And they might be doing things that are eating into that fear and feeding it in some way. But the thing is that you don't know what other people are doing, why you know what they're doing because you see it, but you don't know why they're doing it, and you don't know why they were doing it in the way that they did, and you don't know why they spoke the way they did. And you're going to come up with all these assumptions, but what you need to remember for yourself is that that's a story you've told yourself. Based on their behavior, based on the patterns that you see, it's still a story you're telling yourself. We tell stories all of the time because we're trying to make sense of the world, and it's just how we exist. you know it's based on our past experiences as well. Sometimes things that are so deeply ingrained we don't remember them because they might be from childhood. If someone gave you a weird look and said you were a weird kid, if you keep hearing that and then someone calls you weird, you kind of, you don't like it because as a kid you didn't like it, but you didn't know why. But it's because there's this emotional layer of oh, you're different from me, you're less than in some way. And so that's why the word then has a negative connotation for you. But other people seem to love it. They're like, oh, I'm weird and kooky. But it's because they have a positive association with the word. So we need to be mindful of our own perspectives. And yeah, this comes up then with your dreams, because you need to be able, if you really want to follow a dream, you need to be able to articulate it in a safe way. That's why journaling is so powerful, because you're the only one who's observing the journaling. And I think that you can journal in many, many different ways. It's not about sitting down and writing. Sitting down and writing is a powerful way of journaling because you can see the way that you speak, you can see the way that you think, and you see the way that you make connections. So it is a powerful tool. I'm not saying it's the best one, but all of the tools have their place. And sometimes you need to sit down and write something down. And yeah, I mean, we have to do it all the time. We do it for work. We make to-do lists. We're sending text messages to people all the time. We're writing all of the time. People are leaving comments here as well. So why not spend some of that time writing about yourself? But some of the other ways that you can journal, journaling is really just a creative act where you spend time with yourself and make you the focus of it. Keeping a diary is journaling. Uh, Listening to music is journaling as well. If you go to particular playlists because the way that they make you feel, there is a storyline there that you have, and you use that to help regulate your emotions or to make you feel happier if you're feeling down. You know, if you're not feeling good, listen to some happy music and it will make you feel happy. Uh, Listen to music that you know makes you feel happy. You know, music from 20 years ago or however old you might be. What did you listen to as a kid? Why did you listen to it? If you listen to it now, what does it make you think of? Does it remind you of the happy times? And if it does, good. Just latch onto that bit. Because if you can get that little spark of happiness, then you can carry it with you throughout your day. I like to make monthly music playlists as a form of journaling because then I can see what music was I listening to this month that I heard around me if I was at parties or weddings or in the car or on the radio. And even artists that I follow, when they release new music, I'll put their new music onto the playlist as well. And I've been doing this for, I want to say 2 years. It feels longer. It might be three, actually. I think I started it in late 2022. And now when I look back at old playlists, I'm reminded, oh yeah, this is the time I went to see Phantom of the Opera. Or this is the time I went on holidays to Spain. And there are things that I know I did, but you know, sometimes the feelings, the good feelings that come with them drift away. And it's hard to pull those back when you're in an environment where you're not feeling good. You know, if you're stressed because of work, if you're stressed because of family, if there's money troubles, if there's health problems, like anything that like drags you down a little bit every day, you have to fight against it to like look for the happiness sometimes, and that can be really exhausting. So having those different journalings to remind you of, you know, what you're happy to have and having gratitude is important because it gives you a quick sort of remedy to latch onto. It's like taking painkillers when you've got a headache. It's a quick solution, but it's enough to keep you moving in the right direction because we've got so much external pressure, whether it's a landlord looking for rent or, you know, the supermarket has put their prices up and you can't afford the food you used to be able to eat. Or there's cuts at work and now you don't have the same hours, so but that means you've got less money. There's always these external pressures pushing on you. And if you let them eat away at you, then, you know, you just fall into this downward spiral and then you start wondering like, oh, why do I even bother having dreams? That's why you should keep journaling in some way. Doing exercise is a form of journaling as well. You're creating a space where your body is moving and your mind is not moving. And because your mind is not moving, then your body is kind of leading the way and it says, okay, I'm energized now. I'm giving the mind energy to work on something. It also allows, it's also a form of meditation. Meditation also comes in many different forms, and it's definitely worth trying like meditation in its truest form, where you sit down for 20 minutes and try to clear your mind and to focus on the thoughts that come up. Because then you can just see what that state feels like. And if it is uncomfortable, that's okay. It's going to be uncomfortable at the start because when have you ever sat on your own quietly for 20 minutes without distractions? It's probably been, has it been years? If you've never meditated before, when was the last time you sat quiet in a room doing nothing? Our phones are constantly buzzing, trying to keep our attention. I've had to set up a version of focus mode, which basically turns off all notifications from showing up on my notification bar. The only thing that will get through is if I get a phone call. And I've had to do that because I'm getting distracted by notifications. Something is pulling my attention away. And I've also had to say to people, look, I've got this mode now. If you need me, you need to call. Um, or just text me about something and I'll see it when I do. Uh, we're stuck so much in this world where our attention is expected every single minute of the day. And that wasn't the case 20 years ago. When social media was just coming out, we realized, wow, we can connect to people we haven't spoken to in so long because they live so far away and it's really difficult to connect. But now that has become natural and we're expected to hold on to this connection all of the time because suddenly you have 500 friends and each one of them is sending you a message. Like, how can you expect to respond to all of those? It'd be like back in the day if you got 300 letters from people. Like, that's a lot of information to take in and then digest and respond to. But that's what we're expected to do now with social media. And that's how it keeps our attention. That's how it's addictive, you know? And now it's got to the point where you're seeing reels and videos that are 7 seconds long and you're keep swiping for the next dopamine hit. And that's how it's taking your attention away. And that's why something like meditation is important. Just to try it out, do an experiment. I am a big believer in doing experiments because they give you a space where you can try something and just kind of give yourself away to the experience. If you sat down and decided, right, I'm going to meditate for 10 minutes today, 10 minutes tomorrow, and 10 minutes the day after. I'm going to leave my phone in another room, or I'm going to put on Do Not Disturb and then use the timer. Or, I'm going to use an app to get it to help me to meditate if someone is guiding me through meditation. There's lots of different ways you can do it. And I suggest trying different methods. When I started, I don't meditate all that often. I can't remember the last time I actively sat down and meditated, but what I did get from it is I realized, oh, this is the goal of meditation is to quieten the thoughts that are racing. When someone else is guiding me through it, I can just give myself up to what they're saying and listen to what they're saying and just do what they're doing. When it's not guided, it's a bit harder because you have to fight your own thoughts. But the more you practice on it, the more you realize that you can do this all of the time. And meditation is like exercising for your mind. There's lots of things that are exercises for the mind, but meditation is one of them. You go to a gym to exercise and work out. You're not doing just a treadmill or just weights. You do a bunch of different things because they all have their own purpose. Meditation is one of those. Journaling is another one. Journaling is a big... I think people don't like it because journaling usually comes down to writing and spending hours with a pen and paper, and that doesn't work for a lot of people. And I agree. But as I mentioned earlier, you can journal with music, you can journal with exercise, you can go for walks, observe nature, be away from your phone and see the world in a different way. These are all different ways of journaling because you're sitting with your thoughts and your feelings and examining where you are at the moment, how do you feel, do you have enough energy to do what you want to do? Do you have enough energy and passion to focus on your dreams and goals? And so this all ties back to vivid dreams because we all have desires for what we want to do with our time. We don't always share them because they might be ridiculed, they might be silly, we might know that we're not in a position yet to work on them because of our circumstances, whether it's with work or money or family responsibilities. And so we don't ever talk about them. But because we don't talk about them, they never get a chance to materialize. You know, if you share your dreams with your family and your loved ones and say, look, I don't know, it could be a family holiday and say, you know, I want to go on a family holiday next year. This is where I want to go. It's going to cost this much, but I really want to do it. I think it'll benefit everyone. We will need to save for it. You're creating a collective goal. And so when it comes to making decisions about things, you know, you're giving people autonomy to choose, like, okay, let's make coffee at home instead of spending 5, 6, 7 euro every day on a morning coffee. Because then that money we can take and put it towards our holiday. And then your holiday gets paid for without you really doing much about it. You know, it'll take a bit of getting used to do the morning coffee. But you're doing it in search of something bigger, which is this family holiday, as the example. And it doesn't need to be that you have to wait to suddenly materialize 3,000 euro. You can do these little things bit by bit that build it up over time that you're not even really aware of. And that's the same with your internal goals as well. If you want to be someone who is, if you want to learn a new skill, if you want to learn how to use AI or you want to learn how to do accounting and I don't know, maybe a carpentry course to build your own furniture, you have to start somewhere and make mistakes and then get better at doing it. And that's what chasing your dreams is all about. But each step that you try to do that's new brings up fear in some way, fear that you'll fail, fear that you're wasting your time, fear that the other people around you don't see this as being a good idea, maybe. And that fear can hold you back as well. So take the small steps that you're comfortable with doing. And even if you're not comfortable with them, try to talk to people about them. Try to share your perspective because, you know, you might be trying to go down this path and it gets blocked time after time. But go over there. Sometimes you just need another person to say, actually, you can go this way instead, and it's much easier. Because our pathway to a dream is built upon our assumptions and expectations. We can sometimes get stuck not thinking outside the box. I think when people focus on their dreams and do little things to keep themselves being creative, you start to build trust in yourself, your abilities, the way that you present yourself, the way that you tell your story. The confidence you have to be yourself and be authentic. When you build this up, then you can start having the big irrational dreams because other people start to see, oh, you really believe in it. You must see something that I don't see. And, when I started Kiki Dreams Big, I had this dream, but I didn't know how to articulate it or where it was going to go. I just had this vision and all these little parts. And then when people would talk to me about it, I would say, like, oh, I don't have this figured out yet, and I don't have that figured out yet. And usually it's met with one of two responses. One of them is like, okay, you don't know what you're doing. And the other one is, okay, I see you're working on it. That's really interesting. And that second one is curiosity. The first one is doubt. When other people are doubting you, it's because they obviously don't share your vision, but they don't see as much as you do. You can spend all of your time explaining why you believe in it, but if they're leading with doubt, then they're not going to believe you anyway. There's no amount of evidence that you can give them, and we end up spending so much time trying to disprove other people's doubts, and that's because we have doubts ourselves that it's going to work. We're trying to justify it to ourselves, but we just have to believe that it will work out because we know we're capable of doing it. We just don't know how to get there yet. And it's the how to that takes time, because you can follow the path someone else has set out for you, going to school, going to university, getting a job, going up the hierarchy of the job. That is a pathway someone else has set out. And that is useful and helpful as well, because it gives you a structure to follow when you're not sure where you should be going. But it's showing you that, these skills, this is how you apply them. And you can do that with any skills you pick up, whether it is professionally or from your interests and hobbies. You just need to trust that you can do that. And that's what I want to be able to share with people, is talk to them about what are their dreams, what are their fears, and try to show them that they already have the skills to get there. People keep asking me, like, what's my accreditation for this stuff? And I have a lot of degrees and credits for various things, but with this initiative, Kiki Dreams Big, my experience is 33 years of being alive. And if there's anything that I've learned from doing advocacy work and volunteering with people and whatnot, is that so many of our experiences are shared amongst each other. So when I say that I had a problem with, my self-belief, then I'm going to share how I overcame that. And other people who look at me and say, oh, I've got a problem with self-belief as well, I could try out this method and see if it works. And that's what I am doing here on this live. That's what I'm doing on my various platforms. I'm sharing my perspective of what is the problem I noticed and how am I getting around it. And the people who find some good in that are the people who will connect with me, and they're the ones I want to talk to, because we've got one shared perspective, so we can work on that together. And that's all you really need. There's this idea that I'm sure you've seen before online, where if you look at a skeleton, you don't know, where was this person born? Is it a man or a woman? What's the color of their skin? You just know it was a person. And like, science will be able to tell you some of those things, but not always all of them. We have to use context clues, like where was the skeleton found? If it was in a graveyard, then yeah, this is probably a local person. So we can build an image of what they might have been like. And that's what we forget. We're all people. We all bleed. We all feel. We all love, I hope. Uh, and we all have dreams. That's what we have in common. We have humanity in common. So why is it that so much of the world is segregated on these ideals that we're working in different ways? Why isn't the truth somewhere in between, in the middle? I think it is, but I think so many people are focused on their own goals a lot of the time. They get into positions of power and their way is right because that's what got them there. And that that's like putting blinders on. You're so focused going this way, you can't see what's over here. But if we're aware of everything around us, we can see how can we help each other in order to help ourselves. For Kiki's Big Dream Experiment, I'm on week 3. I set this up as a container for me to work towards the goals I've set out, for connecting with people, to share my experiences, to share like how I'm showing up every day. I'm showing up every day in some little way, publicly, but not perfectly, because this idea of perfection is debilitating. There's things that we need to be perfect with. When you're trying to um, land a man on the moon, you need to be pretty perfect with everything that goes into doing that, because if you get it wrong, there's lives at stake. And, you know, it's not just a single person who controls that. It is an entire network, a web of people who are working towards that singular goal, that every little step is really important. But being human is naturally imperfect because no one is given a manual. We're taught how to show up in the world because of the way that we're raised by our parents or the environment around us. And it's those teachings that get you to a point of survival. But we're in a world now where surviving is pretty easy to do. Um, but thriving is very difficult. When we had more freedom to do things, people were thriving and people were happy because they had their own time, they had their own creativity, they could do things, and there weren't these expectations on them. Whereas now, literally everything you do, your attention is being pulled somewhere. You have the house insurance to pay, you have the car insurance to pay, you have the uh, taxes, uh, various taxes. You've got your property tax, you've got your car tax, you have your television license to pay, you've got your electricity bills to pay. You've all of these things pulling at your attention all of the time, and it's exhausting. And you're just trying to survive. Can't you be left alone for a month and not have to worry about paying your electricity bill? When I started working, I set my money up so that I didn't have to worry about my electricity bill because I got paid into one account. I took a portion of that and put it into another account, and this other account is where all my bills went. And I just had to like keep an eye roughly that I was putting in more than was coming out. And so once I was sure of that, and once there was a bit of a buffer after maybe 2 or 3 months, I could just let that work and I didn't need to worry about it. I didn't need to worry how much I'm spending on the electric bill. If the house is cold, I can just go and put the heating on. And I don't need to worry about it's going to cost this amount of money. And that's what we need to do. We need to take these distractions and find ways to put them out of our mind. That's why I've got the mode on my phone to stop notifications coming up. It is why, we wear headphones when we're trying to focus on work. So the people don't come over and ask us questions to pull us out of it. Um, because time is our only commodity. We use time to create in the world. Everything we do is creating. Moving your hand is creating something. You're creating movement. And something is happening with that. You're waving it and air is being blown around. And it might not have an effect doing anything. You might just feel it. But if you use your hand in the right way to write a postcard to someone, you've now taken your thought, turned it into an action, and you've got this postcard that when you send it, someone's going to receive that and feel a particular way. So you've turned your thought into an impact on someone else. The way that you have that impact is your creativity, because okay, if I send this person a postcard, they will feel loved or surprised, and you're building a connection with them. If you give them a phone call, then you're having a one-to-one conversation, and that is going to evoke a different set of emotions, perhaps. But all of these things are creative, and they help in different ways, and they help us connect with each other. So much of social media and even the discourse around AI at the moment is that most of what's online is soulless. I find it funny. I go on LinkedIn and I saw all these posts condemning AI, and I'm looking at them and they all read the same way, which means they've all been written by AI. And it's just, do people not see that there's no soul in what they're writing? Because suddenly everyone has the same opinion. So no one has an opinion. There's no perspective on it. There's no uniqueness to it. There's no creativity that goes into it. You've just used AI to save yourself some time, but you've lost the nuance and the essence of it, the creative bit that is you. I use AI a lot for brainstorming and organizing my thoughts and ideas, and to help me do things that I can't do on my own. I talked earlier about, if I spoke to someone who was a tax accountant about incorporating a business, um, I'll throw that into ChatGPT and go back and forth a little bit and get like a rough landscape of what the environment is like. Because if it says, oh yeah, from what people say online, you need to earn X amount of money in order to, one, legally be required to, I don't know, declare things, or two, for being efficient with your taxes, we'll say. And I'm like, okay, those are good numbers to know. I don't need to talk to a tax accountant now because I'm not in a position where either of those affects me. So, I've spent 5 minutes talking to ChatGPT about this, and it's given me an insight that might have taken me an hour to get to with someone else. Because a tax accountant is going to be looking at me as a person who is ready to work with them, not as a person who has no idea what the landscape looks like in the first place. And when it comes to creativity as well, like, I don't create anything and put it out in the world if AI has generated it and I am losing the soul element of it. I get it to help. It's only recently I've started to get it to help me with cover pictures and things like that, because I don't know where to start. And I've talked to lots of people about branding and color theory and all these other things. And yeah, the first consultation is free, but then it's, €2,500 to form a brand package for Kiki Dreams Big. And I'm like, I don't have €2,500 to spend on something like that. What I do have is I have a vision and an image in my head, but I don't have the artistic skill to put it together. Um, I could go and learn it, but the amount of time, because I know my own skill set, the amount of time it would take me to get to a level where I'm comfortable putting something out there is it's miles away as well. But ChatGPT and AI tools can visualize these for me, and I can tweak what's in them, and they become good enough. The purpose isn't that I'm using those visuals to share my message. The visual is just there to, I guess, share to have something visual to latch onto. But the content is in all of the words that I write. And the visual thing there is so that everyone's looking at things in the same way. If you think about a movie that's based on a book, if you've read the book, I'm going to take Harry Potter as an example. When I was reading Harry Potter as a kid, I had all of these images of like what Hogwarts was and everything. Then I started playing video games and I saw that weird. Um, I played video games and I saw, oh, this is what the interpretation of Hogwarts is with respect to how a video game works. And it's not going to show us everything, it's only going to show us what's required for the video game. And then the movies come along and you see the world on a bigger scale because you have to see the castle, but then you are only going to be, around parts of it. But now suddenly the image of Hogwarts becomes the movies. And now all of our collective experience of Hogwarts is what the movies show. And that's why, all of these other mediums are important together because they start to align you on a singular path. And that can be bad as well. But for me, when I'm writing articles, I want to have like a visual element that kind of stays the same and then changes a little bit based on the content. For example, I do a newsletter on LinkedIn and it's based on my theme of the week, which comes from a tarot card. So I have the title of the article, the date, and then the tarot card that it relates to. And that's just my visual hook for, oh yeah, here's Kiki's newsletter. And the content of it then is, my actual thoughts and feelings on what I'm trying to share, the story I'm trying to share. And then people start to associate this visual cue with those thoughts and feelings. So the next time they see something that looks like it, they think, oh, that's Kiki's newsletter. I must go and have a read of it. This is what advertising is. Companies have their logos and you feel a particular way based on what story they're telling about the logo. It might be, who knows? uh, I'm just replying there to hamburger. Who knows? It could be dreams, it could be trauma, I don't know. Medical condition. uh, when I talk about dreams, they are, these stories we have in our head about what we want to do with our time. If we listen to the dreams we have at night when we wake up, there's usually something in there. Um, if we're going through particularly stressful times, you can be dreaming about what's causing you stress, and it can really pull out the emotions quite viscerally. And the trouble with dreams is, unless you write it down or start talking about it the moment you wake up, it disappears so quick. You might still be able to see flashes of it, but the story is gone. Uh, but they're telling you something in some way. You know, a dream interpreter is an interesting role, but ultimately it is what your opinion of the meaning of something is that is important. So hamburger period of lucid dreaming, I'd always end up dying from something crazy. Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Like why does the lucid dreaming always end up that way? I think like I experience that as well sometimes, and I wonder if it's because I'm being self-aware that I'm in a dream, and that's a scary thought as well. Because if you start thinking of something, it's going to happen. You know, if you start thinking of a big scary monster, it might just appear. And there could be this subconscious piece of you that says, okay, I need to wake you up, so I'm going to kill you because that will shock you into waking up. That's uh that's one theory for me from me. But lucid dreaming, I didn't realize I was doing this because I suppose I was always mostly attentive, but I daydream a lot. But I kind of give myself into it because it is a way that I can navigate thoughts and see like how what's my subconscious throwing up that I can kind of play around with. And it's great for problem solving because you can see things in a little bit of a different way. You can toy with ideas that you might not be able to toy with in the real world. I think they're all related. I think it falls into daydreaming when that's what your focus is. Your focus is on the thoughts and the scenario, and you're not paying attention to stuff around you. You know, people are trying to get your attention and they tap you on the shoulder and they're like, are you listening to me? And you're like, oh, I didn't know you were talking. I think that's when it falls into daydreaming, but it starts with general thoughts and then scenarios. Then the scenarios start to build together into, oh, what if these two things happened at the same time? And you've got so much sensory stuff going on in your head that it becomes daydreaming because you've only got so much mental capacity that your brain is like, okay, well, we're dedicated now to the daydreaming. Let's focus on there and ignore everything else around you. That's the way that I think of it. And we can get caught daydreaming in school or in work because other people are trying to get our attention all of the time and we're not focused on them. Hey, Mark. So that's what I think daydreaming is. You know, you start with these general thoughts, let they kind of build up in your subconscious, and eventually you hit a point with you're kind of consumed by them. And that's okay. Give yourself permission to do that. Meditation is great for it because you can go both ways. You can sit there and understand your thoughts and focus on your body and your physical sensations around you and learn how to ground yourself. But equally, you can sit there and let the daydream thoughts take you away. You might have heard this thing before where, people have these crazy ideas just as they're about to go to sleep. And it's because you're kind of getting a peek into your subconscious. When you go to sleep, your subconscious is like, okay, I have all this information from the day. I need to categorize it and put it in some boxes so that I'll be able to retrieve it the next time. And that's why it's ends up throwing around these disjointed ideas. You're like, why is it doing these things? And it's doing them because it's the most efficient way for it to put them away. And it doesn't necessarily mean anything. But when you're watching it happen, you're realizing a story that's happening based on your experience from the day. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I could think about this later. Maybe I could think about that. And it's a different perspective of what's going on. You know, it's like in the movie Inside Out. At the end of the day, they take all of the memories from that day and then they send them to long term memory, and they have to go through this entire process. But if, your emotions intervene in some way and, take some of those memories and like look at them, they end up projecting into your dreams. And that's your subconscious at work saying, oh, this is important to remember. That's my perspective anyway. And it's one that I'd like to play with because it kind of gives me some agency over my thoughts. I don't know what the neuroscience says about it, but I think everyone has their own perspective on how they think and how they operate in the world. And we have to make sense of that because there's no user manual for how to think. So we just have to do our best. There's no user manual for dreaming either, but we still have dreams. And this is how I'm trying to connect the two together. These dreams come up because of things that have captured our interest, and subconsciously we're like, oh, maybe someday. And so just do these little pieces, little tasks that get you towards those dreams eventually, and the fear won't be as strong. If you do a small action, the fear is going to be very small and you can handle that until eventually you build up enough resilience and confidence to take on bigger tasks. So those are my 2 cents for the theme of vivid dreams this week. I'm going to finish up my stream now. I tend to go over time with this, but that's okay. It's my stream. I'm going to do that if I want to. I'm doing another live stream tomorrow, but I'm going to be doing my focus is going to be on using tarot and problem solving with respect to theme of the week. I'm doing this instead of my YouTube lives because I realized when I sat down to organize them, I needed 50 subscribers and I don't have that yet. So rather than waiting until I have 50, because that's depending on external environment to take action, I'm replacing it now with my TikTok live tarot readings. And I want to do the readings a little differently to what you see other people doing on TikTok. I think tarot is a great tool to act as a mirror for your own internal thoughts. If I do a tarot reading for someone else and I tell you what the card means, I'm telling you what it means for me. But how it should work really is you look at the meaning of it and I help you I guide you through how to turn that meaning into an action for yourself. And that's how tarot works for problem solving. I do a daily tarot card every single day I guess I'm solving a problem. I'm taking something from yesterday that I'm grateful for, a task I want to do today, and a dream I want to get to tomorrow, and building this pathway between them and using a tarot card to help me navigate a solution for it. And my solution is a reflection and an affirmation. The reflection makes me think about how those things connect together. And the affirmation is sort of it's a one sentence line that connects everything together. And over time, these affirmations build up into, you know, confidence and belief and all these other good virtues, because that's what I'm aiming for over the long term. So I'm excited to get started with this. I am going to be starting with my first theme, which is letting go, and we'll see what comes of that. So it'll be a while. I do want to catch up so that my weekly tarot is speaking to the theme of my week. So next week will be week 4. I would hope that I can do enough of these lives to do my 4th tarot next week, but I'll see. If I can do at least 2 of those tarot readings per week, then I'll eventually catch up with my theme. And this is the thing, it all comes back to showing up publicly, not perfectly. Because in a perfect world, I would have figured this out 2 weeks ago and done my tarot live then. But, circumstances didn't allow for that. I didn't have time to stream everything 2 weeks ago because I was in Manchester. I was coming back from holiday and, all of these various external things that I chose to do that impacted the amount of time I had in a week. And that's okay. I've made my peace with that as a structure for Kiki's Big Dream Experiment. So I don't feel bad about starting something 2 weeks late because I only had the idea this week. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there for this week, and I look forward to continuing this conversation next week with whatever theme that might be. And in the meantime, you can join me for... I will do this live on Thursdays at 1 o'clock. If you see any other lives coming up in the meantime, it's going to be tarot. And I'll probably try and do my tarot readings, my weekly one, on Fridays. So I hope to have some consistency soon enough. Thanks for joining me today. And this episode is about the theme of vivid dreams. So I hope you had a good time watching and participating. Keep dreaming.